Hey cool cats! Interstate 76 is a vehicular combat game developed and published by Activision in 1997 for Windows. Nostalgia is a word composed of the Greek for home and pain, or homesickness if you will, but we can just as easily be nostalgic for the idealized image of something we've never directly experienced. The 70s might be one such era, envisioned as maybe a time of experimentation and progress, but also of turmoil and righteous struggle against the man. No less so than the alternate timeline of Interstate 76, which presents a 70s where an oil crisis has led to the collapse of the United States. The roads have now become a dangerous playground for weaponized vehicles driven by rapacious bandits, often in cahoots with the corrupt and even more heavily armed state police. The only thing standing between these villains and the ordinary folk they prey on are the so-called auto-vigilantes, who drive instruments of justice armed and maintained by pieces salvaged from their defeated foes. In an interview with Gama Sutra, director Sean Vesher told the story of how the initial idea came to lead designer Zachary Norman as he was flicking through a car magazine looking for a new car. Instead finding inspiration for their next project when his gaze chanced upon a spread of hot and steamy muscle cars. At its core, the plot would be a fairly simple mission for revenge or justice soaked in 70s TV and movie tropes, but it would hit upon something primal, at least for me. There's something attractive about the powerful, visceral sensuality of guns chambered to calibers so dangerous they might hypothetically threaten the integrity of the vehicles they were mounted onto. Vehicles so masculine, they're called muscle cars. Interstate 76 would make me a little gay for muscle cars. The already dated MechWarrior 2 engine was rewritten for the game, keeping the system of modular outfitting with its tweakable armor and chassis reinforcement familiar to any player of Battletech or other mech sim games. There's also an appreciable sense of weight to the driving, as is appropriate to the majestic gravity of such chonky boys as they cruise along the highway like gunboats on wheels. The groovy setting is also wonderfully brought to life by memorable performances and one of the best soundtracks in gaming history, featuring talented artists such as Third Eye Blind former bassist Arian Salazar and keyboardist for Santana Tom Costa, all recorded on vintage equipment. Available for purchase on GOG, this game is something of a nostalgia pick for me, something I remember quite fondly from a rental from the video store back in the days of yore. But sadly, age has not been kind to Interstate 76, and running it on modern hardware these days can result in a litany of issues. As a brief summary of the number of hoops I had to go through to get this running, first the typical tinkering in DG Voodoo with the added step of editing the config file to cap the frame rate at a whopping 23 frames per second to avoid the game running too fast, making certain jumps impossible. The Glide version turned out to be better than the DirectX version for reasons that I've since forgotten, but to get to it you need to add the -glide command line argument to the shortcut. As an aside, the menus are still in DirectX, even though the gameplay changes to Glide. Then there was the realization that for whatever reason, the GOG version's wrapper that is supposed to play the CD audio has failed, and the audio soundtrack is something of a vital component for the whole Bix. So first I had to get a copy of the unpatched EXE from some random GOG post, and then drop in an alternate CD audio wrapper called og.winnmm. When I finally booted up, I was confronted by the parts of the game that time had effaced from my memory, initially mistaking them for bugs. The odd geometry will twitch and spasm in front of you as you approach sometimes. The way a part of your car model on the left-hand side flickers in and out of existence, which bugged me throughout the entire game. Time has not been kind, no, but has not managed to completely erase its incredible charms. Before we go on a little road trip down memory lane, let's crack open the hood a little and see how it all works. Owing to the MechWarrior lineage, there's a satisfying amount of depth to the systems. Each vehicle has its own tonnage, which is distributed between each quadrant, front, rear, left and right, The tonnage can also be almost entirely shifted between armor and chassis. Armor takes damage from bullets and rockets, while chassis takes damage from collisions and fire. This weight can be almost completely redistributed around the car in this manner, allowing you to protect crucial areas, typically front and rear. In addition, there are the various upgradable parts that make up your car, such as wheels, engine, suspension, brakes, and weapons, all of which are capable of being damaged or destroyed, leaving you hobbling to the finish line dealing with constant left veer from a damaged wheel, or render you weaponless, leaving you with the hope your pursuers accidentally flip it somewhere back. As you upgrade your vehicle with parts salvaged from your defeated foes, it's never made explicitly clear that the more powerful car parts are also more vulnerable to damage, which is rather counterintuitive. Damaged parts, both your own and any scavenged from your foes, take the length of a mission to be repaired by Skeeter, the game's mechanic, who has a limited capacity for item repair dictated by the quality and type of the part and how much damage it has sustained. Though weapon slots and tonnage vary by car make and model, the main story restricts you to the fictional Picard Piranha, based off the majestic Plymouth Barracuda. In the game, this is considered a decently fast, medium-sized car, and can be equipped with 2 top-mounted weapons, and 1 rear-facing weapon, and a further rear dropper. Although the story consigns you mostly to the one vehicle, there are missions, skirmishes, and a multiplayer mode that provide you with a large variety of vehicles with different setups, weapon slots, armor and weight, and even handling. The 70s were a time when they liked them heavy though, and cars are never capable of much acrobatics. Big run-ups are needed for jumps, and even then, any sort of airborne activity is actually a harrowing, nail-biting affair. There's a very real danger of flipping on your roof and insta-combusting, even if just taking a rough patch of terrain too fast. In cockpit view, you feel every bump on the road, and the road is very bumpy. Weapons are of the nature of those affixed to military vehicles, and the game features an expanding and fairly diverse arsenal. These do feel fun to shoot, even though often it's unclear what's most effective. There's the slow, impactful 30mm cannons, through to the satisfying banshee wailing of a torrent of 7.62mm machine gun bullets, and an assortment of explosive ordnance, both dumbfire and tracking. In MechWarrior fashion, weapons of a similar kind facing the same direction can be linked to fire at once, and a turret can be added to the roof, capable of tracking a locked-on target. Turrets are actually highly recommended over just using 2 front-firing linked weapons due to the amount of damage that enemies can do in later missions, making hit-and-run engagements more practical. Finally, there are also droppers, encompassing landmines, blocks droppers, oil slicks, and fire droppers, useful for deterring pursuers. Your car can also equip up to 3 specials, which can be practical things like a nitrous booster, or items offering passive bonuses such as fender reinforcements. After taking an enemy down to a red health bar, you can also dispatch them by also pulling up and firing through their windshield 5 times with your 45, providing you with the opportunity for increased salvage at a better condition. It can actually be pretty tricky to line up your shots with a fast opponent, and becomes less practical as your enemies become too dangerous to pull up alongside. But it's also the most righteous way to do it, like the Angel of Death delivering cool and steady retribution. Also of note are that the vehicles in the game are automatic, while still giving you the freedom to shift gears as if in a real car. The engine can also be turned off to nullify seeking missiles if lacking countermeasures, another feature firmly established in mech games. You can monitor the damage of each and every part of your car, cleverly visualized on the game's HUD as modules bolted to metal rails inside the car. Missions become a dangerous battle of attrition, and a bad fight might cost a large part of your car's functionality. Many times I only reached the end of a mission by the skin of my teeth, limping to the finish line with the equivalent of an engine and 2 wheels with which I'm locked into a death struggle to travel in a straight line. At its best, it's unpredictable, chaotic fun, while at its worst might lead to frustrating restarts as you try to make your way through a tough mission with your best weapons still in repairs. Missions in Interstate 76 mostly involve a similar pattern of driving to a place, destroying enemies, then sometimes retreating to another location, at times while escorting another vehicle. There are also a couple races, which are fun, although violence seems to inevitably follow even in these. Navigation is done entirely with compass and paper map, no objective markers, with the entire UI kept within the 70s theme. It's a sort of consistency that really helps in immersing you in the game's setting. We'll now explore the first game story, called The Trip in-game, which stands for Total Recreational Interactive Production. Let's get groovy. The economy is in the throes of a deep recession. Flames of riot rule the cities. Gas is expensive and scarce. Crime is rampant. No one seems to care. This is a time for vigilantes. Your sister Jade was one such vigilante, operating under the call sign Vixen. In the opening cutscene, we watch as her Picard Piranha is pursued by a creeper, or auto-villain in the jargon we use for the armed criminals, who increasingly terrorize the highways. The pursuer's mounted guns rattle in time with the game's music as she swerves in an effort to avoid a hail of fire. Until she loses control and crashes. Jade tries to take refuge in a junkyard, but is pursued and then finally shot by a dapper, mustachioed gentleman who decides to end her life with a throw of a dice. Before he can finish her off, he flees under the fire of a man with an afro. Jade lives long enough only to die in her would-be rescuer's arms. Her final words are,
"Find my brother. Tell him."
And so you, Groove Champion, come to learn of the death of your sister Jade Champion, and this is how her Picard Piranha comes into your possession. An inherited recording of your sister's voice on cassette tape forms the basis of the tutorial.
Hi, Groove.
Oh, man.
I guess you can't get rid of me that easily, Groove. Well, sorry.
Within the game's manual, some brief dossiers give a lowdown of what Jade's been up to. Apart from the car, your last link with Jade is in the form of her two trusted friends and comrades, Taurus and Skeeter. Taurus, call sign Stampede, drives a monstrously powerful Jefferson Sovereign, inspired by the Lincoln Continental, which he calls Eloise. Taurus was formerly a poet from New England, but since the death of his family at the hands of criminals, he's utterly committed to fighting the forces of injustice. Skeeter, call sign Monkey Wrench, is the group's mechanic. The best way to describe Skeeter is if someone told him to get down, and he took it literally.
Skeeter, go away. You go.
Skeeter follows along to provide repairs and outfitting. Together with Jade, Taurus and Skeeter had traced the festering stank of crime to a man named Antonio Malocchio. In Italian, Malocchio, a term for the evil eye, a curse heavily associated with a covetous gaze. The man is described in the manual as a dangerously capable Vietnam vet, morally bankrupt and involved with baddies like Pol Pot, and said to be funded by a businessman in the Middle East. He has completely bought out the cops, allowing his army of creepers to operate with impunity. Malocchio's ultimate plan is unclear, but there's bad vibes for sure, man. It sounds so fantastical, the Groove doesn't even believe it's real.
Jade was always a better racer than me, man. No damn secret. And now you tell me she was a vigilante? I mean, guns? On her Piranha? It's not Jade, man.
No, Groove, you're wrong.
Taurus drops some heavy truths.
She and I and a handful of others are the closest thing to law around here. But recently everyone's been turning up dead.
I'll be spoiling the entirety of the game, including key scenes. If you don't want this, skip ahead to my general impressions at the timestamp below. You ride with Taurus, who shows you the ropes, easing you into taking out your first creepers and scoring your first salvage. Skeeter gives you some advice that will become a maxim repeated throughout the game in its mission pack.
Jade, she built a good car.
Yeah.
But she got out.
What?
Never get out of the car.
In the second mission, Taurus takes Groove on a friendly race, although I might have cheated a little.
Watch that shit, cowboy.
You make your first impressive jump and the camera focuses in on your triumphant moment.
Jump?
Despite some pangs of guilt over having to kill his enemies, Groove proves himself a natural auto-vigilante after Taurus leaves him to fend for himself as a school comes under attack by creepers.
Now, Groove.
Don't now groove me, Taurus. You left me out there. I was a sitting duck.
Groove, you did well.
Damn straight I did. Killed that guy.
Let me pause to muse for a moment. What does it mean to groove? To groove is to vibe to a rhythm. There's a suggestion of going along with something naturally or intuitively. It almost implies following a course, like the course of a groove of a vinyl record, echoing something like the Taoist concept of wu wei, effortless action, inasmuch as it's possible to compare anything to that ineffable concept. After all, the way that can be discussed is not the eternal way. Can you dig it? By doing, groove becomes.
I think better on the highway.
As we return to our story, the following morning the gang find out about a big deal going down at a nearby bar. After Groove and Taurus blow it up, Taurus searches the rubble to find a suitcase full of cash and an unknown document with technical drawings and details. When Groove goes to sleep, he dreams of a race with a man named Patriot and other creepers who later prove to be ghosts from Jade's past. Does this mean the car has kept Jade's memories? Is her spirit haunting the car? Would she be watching if you got roadhead, considering your entire life is nomadic? Who knows, but towards the end of the dream, for the first time, we hear Tony Melocure's sneering voice taunting us.
Hey, nobody steals from Tony Melocchio. Those who do generally wake up dead. But I don't need to tell you that now, do I?
When we wake up, we are shocked to discover Taurus has been shot by Melocure. The money is gone, and it's a race against time to find him before he bleeds out and Skeeter in his van is discovered by creepers. After fighting back ambushes and making a massive jump to reach the van, Taurus arrives in a rough state, but Skeeter knows that'll buff right out.
You fix him up?
The difference between cars and people, cars are hard to fix.
Groove goes out to look for some fuel while Taurus recovers, but gas is getting more and more scarce. As you fend off another creeper attack, an old friend of Jade's gives you a lead. Someone named Cloaker has been hitting all the gas stations in West Texas. We soon learn from Skeeter that the technical documents they found are basically the specs of a H-bomb someone was looking to buy using the suitcase of money Melocure had stolen back off Taurus, who soon rouses and sends you after Cloaker. At this point in our story, the Fuzz begins to show their heavily armed presence on the roads with roadblocks, beefy patrol vehicles, and choppers. Taurus gives you the word on the street about where the bomb deal will be going down, but after knocking out any resistance and finding nothing, they notice someone spying on them. Taurus sends you after the voyeur, who radios frantically for the mysterious Croaker as he flees. The cries for help fall on deaf ears. His vehicle crippled, the spy gives up and eventually croaks under Skeeter's attentions.
No. Oh, God, no. No, anything. I'll talk. This is real big man.
Although it's not clear whether he merely spooked him or if Skeeter really is torturing the guy, but we'll go with the former based on tone. We find out the bomb assembly site is in a factory in Roswell.
Wow. What was that? Flying saucer.
When you arrive at the scene, you sneak into the facility only for the gates to shut closed in a trap as a truck carrying the bomb components escapes. You engineer a reckless escape with a stunt jump that leaves your car ruined in a ditch. After Taurus pulls you from the wreckage and Skeeter repairs your car with the van's engine, the gang race after the truck, fending off countless cops and creepers. Taurus overhears that the truck is heading to a remote town in the West Texas Badlands called Fort Davies. Fast glass cannon creepers with powerful cannons make the surrounding approach especially dangerous, and I had to restart a few times here. When we arrive, we finally learn the extent of the plan.
Fort Davis is not a town. It's an old fort.
Yes. Yes, it is.
And you know what else? It's inside the West Texas federal stock.
Oh, what's that?
The largest oil reserve in North America. Figure it out.
It's not like I intend to put an H-bomb under Radio City. I simply plan to blow up a large percentage of the U.S. oil reserves. Gas crisis turns to gas mayhem. Market goes south, and the economy rocked to its foundations crumbled. Why? Because my employer paid me to do it. Who's my employer? OPEC. Are you surprised?
Well, that's certainly a plan. We prepare for the ultimate encounter via my favourite way of preparing, with a good gnomic utterance.
Jade built a good car. She'll get you through.
Jade or the car?
Yes.
I love Taurus. As per the manner of forts, opposition is stiff, including a chopper and 2 tanks. What you might not know is the tanks in this game are actually largely decorative, like those ultra-realistic cakes that you sometimes see clips of people cutting into. Once the coast is clear, you knock down a water tower to form a makeshift ramp, launching yourself over the walls of the fort and straight into Molecule's dining room. You pass out and wake up bound by rope next to your friends Taurus and Skeeter.
Why?
Money. They pay me well, young champion. But it's a shame I don't have time to chat.
A challenge.
I'm sorry.
A duel.
You couldn't possibly in your condition. Besides, you don't even have a car.
On the stucco wall in the background, there seems to be a truncated version of Jacques-Louis David's coronation of Napoleon, perhaps a comment on Molecule's egotism. The real version is 32 feet long and 20 feet high. Maybe that's why he needs all the money.
Give me a bicycle.
Oh, I am touched, young champion.
I don't know. I'd hate to think that... What if Jade was in her car? I mean, she died on foot.
She would have died anyway. Car or no car.
Prove it.
All right, go on outside. Pick a car. I'd be happy to hasten your reunion with your sister by a few hours. But hurry, please. We do not have much time.
Molecule accepts a duel with a car of your choosing. I chose the sexiest looking car first, but there's something of an Easter egg if you click on the chopper. You don't want the tank. Whichever vehicle you choose, you kill Molecule, as well as the mysterious cloaker and any other goons who attempt to intervene, and the outro plays. As Groove decides what to do with Molecule, he glimpses his sister on the sun-drenched horizon, giving him the resolve to do what he needs to do. On reflection, the offer to duel while tied up in a chair seems an unlikely gamble, until we remember again Malocious dies. He is a gambling man, and it's established he might be too egotistical to refuse and too crooked to not try rig in his favour.
Never get out of the car.
Groove won against all odds, as would be expected of him, invoking older stories of knightly trial by combat. So did he win because of luck? Because justice was on his side? Because Jade was on his side?
Yes.
So in summary, it's no literary masterpiece, it's a pastiche of 70s tropes telling a story as old as time that has been told throughout time. Whether that be about heroes, knights, samurais, or cowboys, it's a story about justice, about right and wrong. What sets it apart, though, is the incredible charisma of both its characters and a western setting where the cowboys ride the coolest vehicles known to history. It hits all the familiar beats you would expect of a traditional hero's journey, as per Joseph Campbell, but the journey's one hell of a road trip with one bangin' mixtape, drawing upon the thrills of all of its influences, both old and modern. In an interview with GameZilla, Scott Krager, Interstate 76's producer, tells us some of the inspirations. Groove was not based on anyone in particular, but written as if to be played by Brad Pitt. In-game, he drifts sleepily through the story, only occasionally rousing from his reflections when his morality calls him to action. Samuel Jackson was the clear inspiration of Taurus, and Pulp Fiction in particular is quoted as a big influence on the game. That larger-than-life character provides so much of the charm to the setting too, both a good friend and a warrior poet providing the guidance Groove so desperately needs. Although the desert landscapes work so well with the setting, there are greener pastures in the game's skirmish scenarios and the expand-alone mission pack, Nitro Riders. These missions take place in the few years leading up to the events of Interstate 76. There's the opportunity to play as Jade, Taurus, and Skeeter and use their vehicles, or any variety of vehicles tailored to your choosing. There's no repair screen or continuity between missions, which are sorted in no particular order, numerically or chronologically, underneath the characters' names. After you beat every available mission, you unlock the ability to play as Natty Dread. Who is Natty Dread? Absolutely no one, a creeper who runs his own gang, although he does have one smooth voice.
This is Natty Dread. Talk to me.
One noteworthy Nitro Riders mission is a parody of the 90s action classic Speed, where you have to keep a bus below a certain speed. Some missions allude to Malocious' consolidation of power, but for the most part Nitro Riders really only works narratively in helping sketch out a larger universe of bandits and auto-vigilantes trying to get one up over each other. Otherwise there isn't a great deal that adds to the original game's narrative, and in my opinion, the discontinuity hurts the coherence of Nitro Riders as a standalone experience. Arguably, Nitro Riders' main attraction at the time was for multiplayer and graphics card enhancements. The new environments, while not bad in their own right, really do highlight how well the rolling, arid landscape of the southwestern US so effectively establish the original game's character. Let's talk more deeply about the visuals. The main game takes place across various American desert biomes, red deserts and flat plateaus in the distance, highways cutting through rolling plains and stony scrublands. These empty expanses devoid of vegetation and long stretches of road help establish an atmosphere of a hostile world where pockets of civilization eke out a vulnerable existence. This suits the main story and probably the capabilities of the engine fairly well, and an attempt to relieve the monotony is broken up by setting some levels at different times of the day. Nitro Riders expands the game's visual palette to some snowy and even verdant areas, sprinkling the landscape with some tree sprites. It's a tolerable change of scenery, I suppose, if you're looking for that, but it should be apparent by now from all the footage that the game engine is a shambling mess. Every now and then a vertex will pop out to spook you before popping back into place. As you drive, cliffs around you shift, as if trying to free themselves from the shackles of their own geometrical limitations. It's something you eventually tune out. By contrast, the car models actually look fairly detailed and display damage fairly realistically, crumpling and deforming pretty convincingly, losing weapons and ejecting massive plumes of smoke, although you do have to overlook parts that appear to be glitching through other parts. Art director Rick Glenn, who created the cars based on real-world inspirations, went on to enjoy a career in animation in Hollywood, with credits from The Matrix through to WandaVision. You'll also notice the pre-rendered cutscenes incorporate a low polygon style that allows them to blend more consistently with gameplay. How actually effective this is can be seen when compared with the sequel, which abandoned the style, and where you can clearly see the fine detail is obliterated by the low resolution of the video. There's an appeal beyond merely the technical in the highly stylized characters of the original game's cinematics. By being constrained in this fashion, the designers give rise to a unique style of 3D expressionism, capturing the essential features of a subject in broad polygonal strokes, giving them a larger-than-life quality. It's a style that I think stands on its own in providing a powerful visual impact. The world is not only admirably served visually, but through a rich audio landscape. There's something immensely exciting hearing a muscle car buzz or thump with the sound of weapons you might usually expect to come from jets or helicopters. Spurting eruptions of machine guns or steady thuds of cannon do a good job of conveying the menacing lethality of your weaponry.
How about that?
As good as the sound design is, it still suffers from the same software decay as everything else, especially in Nitro Riders, where for some reason I couldn't end a mission without hearing some annoying insistent noise that I couldn't quite identify, but drowned all other sounds. It might have been an aggressively loud and repetitive flat tire caused by caltrops. I could never conclusively identify the origin. Whatever it was, it ruined almost all of the latter half of my Nitro Riders footage, which thankfully wouldn't end up getting used. Voice acting throughout the game's cutscenes and in-game dialogue is perfectly executed, but again, technical issues arise when CD audio music plays and conflicts over the top of pre-recorded cutscene music. Andrew Heckler voices protagonist Groove Champion, who reacts to most things with a languid impetus. He cheers when he nails another creeper or congratulates himself when shooting out a driver with your 45, but otherwise responds to most things with chill vibes.
Yeah.
Skater is voiced by Tom Kane, who voices Admiral Akbar in The Last Jedi and Yoda in various Lucasfilm TV series, and Professor Utonium in the Powerpuff Girls. I don't know who that last one is, but it sounded important enough to mention.
Never get out of the car.
Malocchio is played with a captivating dramatic flair, which should come as no surprise when we learn he's played by John Delancey. Recognisable as Q from Star Trek to old school Trekkies such as myself. Taurus is played by Greg Eagles, an experienced voice actor who also played the head of DARPA in the English dub of Metal Gear Solid. Shaft and Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction are cited as inspirations for the character, and Eagles was cast perfectly. His smooth voice and confident guidance providing a solid ground for easing you into the game and the setting. As a testament to the game's commitment to immersion, there's even a button to have Taurus read you a poem.
Hey Stampede, how about a poem?
It's a high-pitched sound. Hot rubber eternally pressing against the blackened pavement. A will is forever. A car is infinity times 4.
Yeah, I like that, man.
Kelly Rogers, Activision's music director, used his contacts to put together a band for the project, dubbed Hallmark. Assembled like Voltron to forge one of the greatest soundtracks in all of games. It was composed by Third Eye Blind founding member Arian Salazar, who also features on bass, and featured Santana keyboardist Tom Costa, Primus drummer Brian "Brain" Mantia, Spearhead guitarist David Schul, and engineer Eric Valentine, who produced for Smash Mouth and Third Eye Blind. It was recorded at Royal Tone Studios in LA with all vintage equipment to capture a more authentic funk sound. The tunes were heavily inspired by TV and film themed music, such as Never Get Out of the Car, the spin on the Brothers Johnson's Get the Funk Out of My Face. The music not only convincingly places the player in the era, but is amongst the greatest themed period soundtracks in gaming history, alongside LucasArts' excellent Outlaws soundtrack. Whenever I'm considering these reviews, I like to ask myself what makes the game special? What makes it distinct from other vehicular combat games that proliferated in the 90s? Quarantine released in 1994 and was at this point fairly dated. Twisted Metal had arrived on the scene in 1995, Necrodome came out in 1996, and Redline in 1999. These are all interesting in their own ways, but lean more into action-oriented gameplay than the simulation-y approach taken by Interstate 76. The closest would have come when Carmageddon would burst violently onto the scene 3 months after Interstate 76's launch, and also featured a sophisticated damage model and functionality loss, its own advanced physics engine that interacted well with its power-up system, and an accessible racing arena hybrid game mode. It was fun and pushed the boundaries of acceptable violence at the time, but I feel still comes up short to the level of depth and customizability of Interstate 76's gameplay. I mention this in the context of a previously referenced Gama Sutra interview conducted January 1999, where director Sean Vescher was asked what he would have done differently. His response, which was probably informed somewhat by Carmageddon, was, "If I could turn back time and do it again, the first thing I would do is make the game more action-oriented, with easier controls, clearer mission objectives, and greater, more frequent rewards. I would greatly simplify the game's shell, most importantly, the vehicle repair screen that players accessed between missions. I talked to a lot of people who were completely baffled the first time they went through. It was far too complex and difficult to use without the manual. I would split some of the missions into multiple missions, especially the first one, and offer a way to save at any point in the game. On the multiplayer side, I would ensure greater security against cheating and hacking, as this really ruined the multiplayer experience for a lot of people. The last thing I would do is demand more time to balance the overall difficulty and learning curve for the game. We never really had the chance to do this properly, and I think the overall game was diminished by this." That's exactly where he would try to take the game's sequel, Interstate 82, which released in 1999, 11 months after that interview. Reviews would be lukewarm. The game is fun, but I feel lost its soul. I don't intend to point fingers about the dumbing down of games. This is the direction everything was heading. PC players long grumbled about the consolification of games, when to be honest, more thought put into more accessibility and universality around controls has definitely been a benefit to the industry and the consumer. And as much as I appreciate the complexity, there are parts of the game's mechanics I definitely didn't know until I had to go back and look into them for the video. These sorts of issues could easily be resolved in the modern era with some sort of pop-up. Interstate 82 slammed the brakes a little too hard on the game's systems, breaking the neck of the series. Ironic, since in the sequel you could now get out and walk, contrary to the first game's maxim. That's not a complaint on the walking mechanic. The actual complaint comes by removing the layers of armor and damage systems, which meant no two fights were the same. A large health bar would run the bottom length of your screen, and enemies would now die with the predictability of a game of Space Invaders. Gone too were the clever in-universe HUD and static paper maps, which, although confusing, helped to immerse you in the game by forcing you to use visual landmarks to guess your position. The static map is replaced in the sequel by an all-knowing auto map which perfectly tracks your position. Putting aside any feelings I might have about going in the direction of an 80s setting and a new Devo soundtrack, the unique visual identity created by the original cutscene character models had gone too, making the sequel's blurry cinematics stand out even more. So when I think of what made Interstate 76 stand out, I think of the compelling depth presented by its assortment of military-grade weaponry. I also think of the modular and granular systems of damage adding variety to encounters. But I also think about its impeccable sense of style, which elevates a decent car combat mech sim variant into something truly memorable. Something that sometimes I think I might enjoy even more on reflection than actually by playing. It's a love I have for its sense of place and the powerful image of vehicles that roar along highways that line a landscape that echoes with the wild, untamed thrill of the western frontier. The accoutrements of 70s action shows and a gorgeous professional soundtrack, with the bouncing rhythms of wah-wah pedal guitars blessing your journey across a sun-drenched, expansive landscape. It's not all highways to heaven, however. Time has taken its toll on Interstate 76. Software rot has set in. Blemishes unnoticed in youth become like cancer in old age. Issues easily overlooked when the game released are more apparent than ever before. The archaic 3D engine seeming to have survived into the present like a vehicle held together on duct tape and dreams. So it's a fun trip, but it's a bumpy road. Frustrating technical issues, graphical limitations, and sometimes unpredictable physics or geometry problems mar the experience. But like an aging friend who might not be what they used to, a brilliance of what I can only call personality shines through. It's a personality that will always be accessible through its soundtrack, outliving the decaying game engine and bringing back memories of the charm of the original game whenever I listen to it. So is the juice worth the squeeze? Should you play the game or just download the soundtrack?
Yes.